In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the assignment tool in Moodle. It creates an area where students can upload files that you then have an opportunity to grade. I'm going to click on Add an Activity or Resource where all things live in Moodle, and assignment is the first of all the activities. So click on that, click on Add. The settings area here for the assignment are very similar to the settings for pretty much everything in Moodle. You start out by naming, and then if you need to upload files, and then further detailed settings. So I'm going to call this Homework 2. There we go. If I needed a file associated with this, I could put it here, or I could just have it in the Moodle site that they see before they even go inside of this tool. You have dates, allow submissions from, so when does it open? Due date, that's when is it due, but that's not the same as cutoff date, which is when will you no longer allow things to be submitted. So at this point, if a student submits something later than the due date, it'll get a big red overdue next to it after they've submitted it. And it'll say overdue before they even submit it. They just know it's overdue. At this date, it simply will no longer allow them to upload or use that item. I think and this remind me to grade by, you get a little notification that says go in and grade. Most people turn that off and leave these two on. Sometimes people put in cutoffs. I find that in general, if you put a cutoff in, then you're kind of in trouble when you want a student to go ahead and submit something. They have to submit it in a different way, and it's no longer in the same place as everyone else's. So the due date makes sure to emphasize when something's due, but this keeps things easy for submission. Submission types, what do you want them to do? Upload a file or have some online text? A lot of folks, myself included, will often just have both available, although if you want to make sure that they only submit a file and are not typing into a text box, be sure to undo that, or vice versa. I always set maximum number of uploaded files to 2. The reason for that is if they upload one file and then realize that they picked the wrong one, if you only have that set to 1, then they have to contact you. You have to come in here. You have to delete their attempt in order for them to proceed to use this. If you set 2, if in that moment they realize they put up the wrong thing, then they can post the right thing, and they'll probably rename it, please read this one. They'll probably still email you frantically, but the assignment is here, right where it needs to be. So I tend to do that. And the rest of this, just kind of leave that like it is. Feedback types. How are you going to respond to them? This means there'll be a feedback comment box. If you want to be able to upload their file back to them with comments on it, make sure you check feedback files. I tend to check both because it doesn't hurt to have that opportunity available to me if I want it to. Comment inline, there's an internal grading tool in Moodle that converts, where appropriate, files into PDFs, and the comment in line allows you to place comments in line, in addition to simply being able to write on top of the PDF, which the tool automatically includes. Submission settings. This is an odd one. Require students to click Submit button. There is a Submit button. If you do not require them, then they upload, and that's fine, and it's just tagged as a draft until they've clicked the Submit button. The advantage to doing that is that it's very easy for them to come back in if they need to and add that second file or whatever. The disadvantage is that by never clicking a submit button, they never get a confirmation that all is well. Now they in a sense they have a confirmation because they can see that their file is up there, but for some students that secondary confirmation is important. Pros and cons, I don't think it matters a huge amount. Just be consistent. Be consistent from assignment to assignment so that students know what to expect. Submission statement. Every Moodle instance, so existing, Moodle for you, has one submission statement that is put in by the system administrator for the Moodle system. Our submission statement is the honor code statement. So what you can do is have this thing where the honor code statement appears and there's a checkbox next to it, and they can't upload and submit a file unless they have checked that checkbox. And so that's good. So the bottom line is, if you want students to check a box next to the honor code when they put up an assignment, turn that to yes. If you don't care, leave it at no. attempts reopen, just leave that at manually. Maximum attempts, go ahead and leave that at unlimited unless you're being very, very particular about what they can upload. If you only have that at 2, then maximum unlimited maximum attempts doesn't make any real difference. The most times they can go in to try to put a file up for you is twice at some point prior to the due date. But by doing that, this again allows them to fix their own problems. Group submission settings, if you have a group of people all turning in only one item, because assignments create a column in the gradebook, by using group submission settings and having first set up groups inside of Moodle with students, this will then port that grade over into each of their gradebooks as opposed to just the one person who uploaded it. Notifications, you're going to want to leave all those at no, or you're going to be getting a ton of emails every time somebody submits something. If you do not use the gradebook, then this makes no difference. But if you do, you'll want to go ahead and establish some of the settings related to how this will appear in the gradebook. Point, maximum grade, what are you grading out of, 110, whatever. Simple direct grading just means you grade it and put a score down. Do you have categories in your gradebook? In our case, we do. We created one in this site in an earlier video called homework, so go ahead and pick that. Leave that alone. Blind marking. Should you choose to grade a paper without knowing who submitted it, first tell your students not to place their name on the document itself, and then choose blind marking. And as a result, when you use the grading tool to grade their submissions, you'll not know whose submissions it is. Sometimes that's important. I don't use this myself because I've never really been in that habit, but I also know that it can make keeping the papers organized when it does not have their names on it a little more difficult. Once you've graded them all, then it appears as their submission, and you know who submitted and who didn't submit. But prior to that, if you have blind marking, you would not. Ignore those. Ignore that. Restrict access, again, you really don't need that much because you've already got dates here, so you don't need to use the restrictions here. And then finally, I'm going to save and return to course, and you'll see there it is, and that icon means it's an assignment. If you want to set an individual student to have some form of a different due date than everyone else, that's called a user override, and that can be done for any item that has any form of a restriction inside of Moodle, whether that's how many minutes do they have access to a quiz, or what is the due date on this. It's generally pretty straightforward. If you need to come back into the settings, you'll go to Edit Settings. If you need to delete something, stuff like that. When I click on that, this is not how students see it. They will see the opportunity to upload a file. You, if you had a bunch of these submitted, would see a bunch of submissions in a row there with their name, the date and time in which they submitted it, the file, and then a column for the grade. And then you could come to the grade button, which brings you into the automatic grading tool, which is a very nice way to easily grade students' papers. We'll have another video on how to grade assignments. And then likewise, you can come over here, which are the tools for this assignment, and you've got the option to download all submissions. It's a little zipped or archived folder that has all of their submissions, which is nice if you prefer to grade on your just grading the Word documents, or if you prefer to print them out or things like that. Click on Example Course 2 again, and pop over here into the gradebook, and you'll see this column, this item has been created, and I can tell the difference between this one that I just made directly by clicking on Add Grade Item, and this one, which is the result of using the assignment tool. So that's the basics of setting up an assignment inside of Moodle 3.5.